Your support helps us bring you programs you love. Go to wyomingpbs.org, click on Support, and become a sustaining member or an annual member. It's easy and secure. Thank you.
Main Street Wyoming is made possible in part by grants from Kennecott Energy, proud to be a part of Wyoming's future in the uranium exploration, mining, and production industry, and by the Wyoming Council for the Humanities, enriching lives of Wyoming people through the study of Wyoming history, values, and ideas.
An American invention in the 1870s led to the end of the open range and the settlement of Wyoming. Can you name that invention? Join us on Main Street, Wyoming to find out the stories about barbed wire and brands, two tools that changed the course of Wyoming history. Welcome to Main Street, Wyoming. I'm Deborah Hammonds, and on today's program I have two sets of guests to share their expertise about barbed wire and brands. First, Joe Lawrence from Casper, one of our state's prime collectors of barbed wire, is with us. Later I'll be talking with Ann Noble and Bill Runner about Wyoming brands. Joe, we are surrounded with just a fraction of your collection of barbed wire. Can you tell me when barbed wire was first invented?
Barbed wire was actually invented in the 1860s, but the true barbed wire, what they call a barb, was invented in the 1870s, and the first patent was 1874 by Joseph Glidden.
So Glidden, that's the kind of barbed wire that we still use today?
Yes, He invented the first barbed wire. He had the first patent on it, and that's the one that was very popular then, and is still popular today because it was cheap to make.
And so that's what people were looking like. Before that, I guess, what was it about barbed wire that made it so necessary in the settlement of the West?
Well, barbed wire, the reason it was invented is because, the government wanted people to come west and settle the land because there was lots of it. The West was an open range at the time. There were big cattle barons, and so when the settlers came into the West, they needed something to protect their gardens and protect their crops. So this is actually what started barbed wire. There were three gentlemen, Elwood, Hash, and Glidden, all attended a fair in DeKalb, Illinois, in 1873, and not together, but separately. And these three gentlemen, one was a farmer, and one was a hardware man, and another was a businessman. And they all decided separately to build a barbed wire. And what they were looking at the county fair was this barbed piece of wood that actually was barbed with nails and attached to the top of a bench. And they thought, well, now if that's a good idea, but we need something that we can fence our gardens and our lot with. So they turned around and invented barbed wire. The first piece of barbed wire actually was done on a coffee mill. Joseph Glidden took his wife's coffee mill and tore it apart and actually produced the first Glidden barb, which is this barb right here, on a coffee mill.
Isn't that something? So that's whenever you have someone in your house who's an inventor and starts taking apart things and stuff, think it may end up being worth millions of dollars.
And it was.
An idea that changed the West. Well, you mentioned some of these. Now, I know in your collection that these are what you call your exotics. Are they your
They're
most...
the exotic or rare wires.
Oh, okay.
The ones that are in these
Well,
cases
what
right
is
here.
it that's so special about them?
Well, these are wires that were invented because everybody wanted to get into the act. You know, once barbed wire was invented, everybody wanted to get a piece of the action, you might say. So a lot of these wires here were invented, but they were so expensive to make, and they just did not do the justice to what they wanted it to do, that they were only produced for a little while and then they were gone. And they didn't survive.
Well, now, when you're collecting barbed wire, what are the things that you look for, you know, in terms of if it's rare or what makes it rare? You said you already mentioned
yeah,
it.
if there isn't very much of it, then it becomes a rare wire. For example, I found 3 wires, and I have them right here. They're all Glidden wires. I found those 3 in Wyoming, and so far, Wyoming is the only place that those 3 wires are found. Now, those wires actually are valued at $50 a piece. Now, when I say $50 a piece, that's for a piece 18 inches long, which is a standard collecting length. The thing that makes these different, and if you were to look at them on a fence driving down the road, they all look exactly the same. But when you start looking at these very carefully, you'll see that, if you look at this one right here,
Mm-hmm.
the barb is on a rectangular line. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Now it's kind of a square line. Okay, then this one, the barb is on 2 lines.
And were these all Gliddens?
And these
There
are all
are
Glidden.
variations that he
The
had.
Glidden patent. Well, what you're looking at here, the patent is on the barb.
Oh, it's the barb itself, not the wire?
Not the wire.
Okay.
And whenever you see a different type of a wire, that's a variation of a patent.
Okay.
For example, this one and the one I was holding, these 2 here. See, now
Yeah.
that's the same
What a barb
same
that is.
patent,
Okay.
but there's 2 variations. See, one's a small plate and the other is a large plate.
All right.
And these are the same patent.
Well, what about something like this where it's nothing but barbs? Where would this have come from?
That was imported from Germany. That's a World War I military wire.
Oh, man. And
Now,
that's
see,
what you
this
have.
one-
You have a lot of military wires that are part of your
Yes.
collection.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So,
The barb that's on this one right here is
Mhm.
actually what they call a 4-prong Glidden barb. In other words,
so it's 4 separate prongs that are twisted on there?
no, there's two different wires that are twisted together, and each one of those ends produce
Okay.
the 4
The 4
prongs.
prongs that are
See, this
sticking
has
out.
this has
It's
the
just
2.
the 2 prongs.
This has 4, and that was German.
Well, what about the ones that have the wooden blocks in them? Why did they have a wooden block in it?
The wooden blocks and the metal blocks like this were used to so that the cattle could see them from a long distance away. That prevents them from, running into the fences and breaking the fences. But it didn't work out too satisfactory because the wooden blocks were burned when they burned the weeds along the fence. They burned the blocks too. So you find a lot of this wire without the blocks, but it's quite rare to find it with the blocks in like this.
So in essence, as attractive as some of these are, we're looking at a lot of failed experiments where people were trying to make some money and...
About 80% of the barbed wire were failed because they were too expensive. It's just too expensive to make.
Well, would this be an example? This one, like, has little spurs on it. Would
Mhm.
that would have been expensive to make?
That's expensive to make, but they made a lot of it. And for example, there had been a lot of that wire found in South Dakota. And because of that, it's not really considered a rare wire. If you find a lot of it, then it's not rare.
Okay.
But like the ones that we have in these cases over here, there may be 10 pieces, there may be 15 pieces, and that's all. That's all that's been found. And because of that, then they are considered extremely rare.
Well, tell me more about the collecting part then. How did you get involved in it?
Well, I was going on vacation over to Cody. We were going to go to the museum, and we happened to stop at the Holiday Inn in Cody, and right above where you register, they had a great collection of barbed wire. And in fact, I think they still have it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, you know, that would look nice if I had something like that over my mantle on my fireplace. So I knew a couple of collectors that had extra barbed wire, so I got some from them. And then there was a show over in Shoshone, a barbed wire show. And I went over there and I got a few more. Well, I made up a real nice plaque and put it above my fireplace. And then I wasn't satisfied.
So to understand how unsatisfied you were with this, tell me how big your display is today when you go to shows.
My display is 75 feet long on tripods, similar to this right here. And it's shown on both sides. On
So
this side,
150 feet in total. And
on
these are
barbed
all,
wire.
oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. That's
I do show tools too. If you notice on the collection behind us, I try to show tools along with the barbed wire to show what type of tool is used at the time.
So that's a collectible also.
Oh yes, things that are collectible are tools, fence posts. That sounds crazy, but you know.
I was going to say I can't imagine storing all of your barbed wire. What do you do? How do you store? What kind of fence posts?
Metal ones mostly, and we have a lot of collectors that said that if it wasn't for the fence posts, we wouldn't have barbed wire, which is true. You know, whether it's a stone fence post or made out of wood or the metal ones, but we have. People that collect the metal fence posts, and they have a collection that it takes a train to haul. So that's
Well, and I certainly appreciate your gloves that you've collected up there. Anybody who's ever worked with barbed wire, you can't make gloves thick enough to
all
work
the
with.
scars on my hands are caused by barbed wire.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, something else I noticed, you have, it's not, this particular one is a flattened and twisted also, isn't it?
There was a few of these made that were made out of what they call a rail or a flat barbed wire like this, and you see one right here. Now these weren't rolled. You can't roll this like you can a regular barbed wire. What they did is they made this in like 10 feet or 16-foot lengths, straight lengths, and then they would put them on the fence, and then they would splice them.
Oh, Joe, I want other people in Wyoming to see this. I know you have a big show coming up, and if people just look in the newspaper, they'll be aware of where they can go and see this on display. It's fantastic, and I really appreciate you bringing all of this with you. Next, we're going to go to a segment where we'll be visiting with a historian and the state's chief brand inspector, who are going to be talking about Wyoming brands with us. Please stay tuned on Main Street, Wyoming. Supposedly, the Spanish explorer Cortez was the first to brand livestock in the New World.